Hi and welcome to the French kitchen. Today we are cooking coq au vin, chicken in wine. So as always, we're going to get straight to it. So, a few more ingredients in our previous recipes, but nothing too scary. We've got our chicken cut for sauté, and if you don't know how to do that, the previous video, which I'll put a link to, shows you exactly how to break down a whole chicken and cut it into sauté, ready for this recipe. So we've got our chicken pieces there, 8 pieces in total, so that's one whole chicken. Got a whole white onion, bouquet garnis, oil for the recipe, flour. I've got chopped ham lardons there, but you can just use bacon if you've got them, or smoked lardons, something like that. Butter, shallots, garlic. So actually, instead of the shallots, you can use buttoned onions if you can find them, but we just can't find them here. So we're going to use shallots instead, which taste-wise is exactly the same. Button mushrooms, a splash of cognac, and some burgundy wine. So first things first, what we're going to do is chop the white onion, the large white onion. No particular way of chopping this. It depends how you want it in the recipe. I would slice it long ways, but you could cube it if you want to. But generally the chunks sort of medium size. You don't want them huge, you don't want them too small and melt. So we're just going to slice through this. Nothing fancy. And at the same time, we're going to take some garlic and probably, I think for this recipe, about 3 cloves. But again, that's something you can edit to your taste, really. So we're just going to chop this. And then once all this is chopped, we're just going to head straight to the cooker and start cooking. So really, there's not too much prep involved in this one other than the chicken pieces. Okay, so we're just going to head to the pan now. We're going to take a large pan and get that on the heat. Take some oil. Not a massive amount, but we're going to fry off the chicken, so enough for that. I'm going to use a generous knob of butter in there as well. So once that's up to heat, we're going to go in, we're going to brown our chicken off first. Then with the onions and the garlic very last, because we don't want the garlic to burn, which it does very easily because it's full of sugar. Pan's nice and hot now, and we're just going to lay these pieces in there. Hopefully they'll all fit. There we go. So what we're not doing, we're not cooking the chicken all the way through, we're just sealing the chicken. So nice colour on all of the sides, just to lock in that moisture. Just turn it around now and again. So after a couple of minutes, we're going to add our onions and get them cooking. Just shake them to the bottom of the pan there. And then the garlic. So we're just going to wait till the onions are softened a little bit. Still on a relatively high heat. And once they've softened, we're going to deglaze it, and we're going to deglaze that with the cognac. So we're about there. The onions are starting to look a little bit translucent. Chicken's nice and sealed. So we're just going to get all this nice stuff off of the bottom. So good, generous bit of cognac. And because the pan's still nice and hot, all that alcohol will burn off really, really quickly, so you're just left with the flavour. But what it'll do is take all that stuff that's sticking to the bottom and just lift it and incorporate it into your sauce. So just loosening the bottom of that there. So once that's burnt off, just sprinkle everything with a bit of flour. And it's not necessarily a set amount, but probably I'd probably say about 50 grams, something like that. And that's just to thicken the sauce. So now we go in with the wine, which is obviously the main ingredient. And if you can, the traditional wine to use with this is a wine from Burgundy, if you can. So we're going about 500 ml. It's the main cooking liquor here. So 2/3 of a bottle of wine. I'm going to turn the heat down now to a medium to low heat. And we're going to cover that and we're going to leave it for about an hour. A good way to check when it's done is if you pick it up by the bone and the bone starts to lift off the meat, then we know it's done. So we're going to leave that now for about an hour and come back to it in a bit to add the rest of the ingredients. And just before we leave it, we're just going to pop a Bouquet garnis in there, which is just bay leaf and dried thyme, just for good measure. So while we're waiting for that, which is going to take about an hour, we're going to prep the other ingredients. And the reason we're not putting them in all together is because if we put the mushrooms in now for an hour, they'd just be slimy and overcooked, and the same with the buttoned onions or the shallots. So really we want to add that in the last 5 to 10 minutes. So all we're going to do with the buttoned mushrooms, depending on their size obviously, we're just going to quarter these. If you've got particularly small ones, you could leave them whole. That's quite nice aesthetically. I wouldn't recommend to use ceps or wild mushrooms in this particular recipe. I don't really think it would work. So there's not really a set amount of mushrooms. It's what you want in your dish. So I'm just kind of doing a generous handful. And they're in one pan. And put the bacon lardons in there. And in a separate pan, we're going to cook the shallots. So size-wise, we're looking for that. About a centimetre cubed, or, the size of a small pickled onion is what we're after. So as well, visually, this helps the dish at the end to look really rustic, because it is a rustic dish. So seeing the large, rough chunks in the end, that's sort of the main ethos of the dish, really. So I'm just going to take a good knob of butter in each and just cook them really pretty much all the way through. So mushrooms, so they've got a nice colour on, and the onions, so they're really tender, because they're only going to get 5 to 10 minutes cooking in the actual liquor at the end. I mean, what I would say with the mushrooms and onion is it's really important not to overcook them, because you do want them to hold that shape. You want it to be really prominent in the dish. And actually, it's a relatively simple dish to make. Other than this separate cooking bit at the end, it's kind of a one-pot thing, and it is a peasant dish, so it's simple in its nature. So these two are about cooked now, so we're going to turn them off, leave them in the pan, and after an hour, when this is ready, incorporate them all, give them 5 or 10 minutes just to mix, and then that's it. So that's been about the time now, about 1 hour. So I'm going to check that it's done, and then we're just going to mix everything together, give it 5 minutes, and then we're ready to serve. So now this is ready. We're just going to add all these other little bits to it. So the onions, the shallots. and the mushrooms and the bacon. And just give that a nice mix up while it's in there. Again, just leaving it on the low heat, 5 minutes just to incorporate all them flavours. So they're all just poaching, they're not boiling, really low heat. And we'll get ready to serve. So, in my opinion, a dish like this is always better as a sharing thing or as a help yourself. It looks presentable wise, you can make it look better than putting it on the plate. So let people help themselves. So we've still got a lot of liquor in here, and we don't necessarily need it all. But what's good about cutting the chicken for sauté is each piece has a bone, so it's nice and tender. And as well, there's 4 pieces of white meat and 4 pieces of dark meat. So it gives everyone a little bit of a taste of, you know, each thing. So I'm just going to place all these in here. Nice hot tray. And if you can, just make sure all these bones which you've cleaned are all facing up. Presentation wise, that just makes it look nice. So all them in there. We've got 8 pieces. Then we're just going to scoop some of the nice bits out. Fill that base up with all the liquid and liquor. Great to like dip your bread in, or I'd maybe serve this with something like French fries and a good chunk of French bread, so you can sort of dip in there as well. So and that's it. Our finished coq au vin dish, and actually it's pretty simple, but it's a really, really French dish, and if you want to impress people by cooking something really authentic, then this is the way to go. Actually, if you wanted to cook it and leave it a day and serve it the day before, it's even better because the wine soaks into that chicken a lot more, you know, and creates a more fuller flavour, but serving straight away is fine as well. So there you are, coq au vin. And I'll see you on our next video.